Besides being more eco-friendly, another growing trend is building houses smaller, much smaller. Tiny homes on average are between 100 and 400 square feet. I wanted to talk to Michael McDougall, who lives with autism. He is super passionate about tiny houses and would like to live in one day. Michael, why are you passionate about tiny houses?
I feel they could be a good solution to solve the issue of persons with developmental disabilities not having a home, to solve the issue of people on the streets just not having a home and they have a job but they just don't have a home.
Yeah, because these are economically viable and they provide stability, right?
You can run this on a solar panels with a few batteries and this tiny home is perfect.
Would you like to live in a tiny home?
Oh yes, very much so. If given the opportunity, I would live in a tiny home almost instantly.
And so you'd like to see tiny houses come to Edmonton?
All across the country, I'd like to see them become a thing. Just so that people don't live in debt and poverty and in a homeless situation.
Thanks so much for talking with me today, Mike. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
Live long and prosper.
So I'm here in Amy and Matt Cozen's tiny home. So Mike, do you have any questions to ask about this tiny home?
How did you build this tiny home, Matt?
Well, we started off by putting everything down on paper, the framing, and kind of designing everything where everything would be. As we built it, we kind of had to make adjustments and work around things as they came up, but I pretty much did everything myself.
How long did it take you to build the house?
It was about 18 months, and originally we had planned on 6.
Things out of your control sometimes.
I guess so, yeah.
How did you heat and water the house?
So we have the tiny wood stove that's behind you, and underneath it there's also a RV furnace, and then we have an RV water pump which pressurizes the system, and then under where we're sitting there's a water bladder down there, and that's where our water is. So the whole home is designed to be off-grid if necessary.
Is this your permanent home, or are you looking to build something bigger?
This is our stepping stone to a bigger home because we would like to buy a piece of property ourselves eventually. And just the way the economy is, being able to afford renting a place or living somewhere else and then building a house at the same time just isn't feasible for us.
Are there any sustainable design elements in the house?
Well, we have styrofoam insulation on the outside of the walls, which increases the R value. And all of our lighting and most of our appliances are DC power. And so, yeah, we could have all of our lights on, and it would be less than a 100-watt bulb.
I am amazed that this house runs on less than a 100-watt light bulb. I could run this house on my lamp at home? Wow. Kenton
Zurbin met up with us at Amy and Matt's tiny house. He's a permaculture teacher who's studied in Australia and worked in Barbados. Kenton and his wife are designing their first home. So, Kenton, what was the appeal of tiny homes for you?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a permaculture teacher, and that has a lot to do with people say like sustainability. How do we design humans back into their landscapes? So I've been doing this for a while, and was starting to look for options for what kind of house I wanted. I wanted to walk more than talk. So the tiny house movement really caught my attention because it allows you to get a house with very minimal debt. I've got a kind of a bias towards getting to too much debt, and yet I still want to have a house that's got a small footprint, or even can be a positive thing on the landscape.
What's the environmental footprint like on a tiny home?
So that's one of the issues with homes these days is we fly materials from all over the world, and they're often full of chemicals, and then it usually doesn't even do a good job what it's trying to do. So what's nice about the tiny house is you have less materials, so immediately there's less of a footprint there. You get to focus on more higher quality materials, and you can actually worry more about the ethics of them. Where do they come from, and how well do they perform? And therefore you have a healthier home that's more efficient, that costs you less.
Right.
Yes.
And what kind of designs were you looking into? How are you building your tiny home?
I really had some very specific design considerations that I wanted to take in. And one of that was that it was a very efficient house. A lot of tiny houses are designed from the States, to be honest. And the temperate climate in Canada is a little bit different. So I actually have R30 walls. I put that extra design consideration, extra money in, so my house was very efficient. So that was one big design consideration when I was doing my design.
What's the advantage of a tiny house over a mobile home or a trailer?
RVs are popular in their own way, true, but often they're not built very well. It's surprisingly how poor they are with insulation. You can even focus on getting a really good one, and it still is not that great. So what's nice about the tiny house model is that you can be literally building a tiny house. It's got all the same, structure and layout of a house in a way. It's just condensed. You can build and customize each part of the house to focus on what you want in your life. Tiny houses are different than RVs in that you get to put a lot of that emphasis into what part of them you want to make a priority in your life.
You're a permaculture teacher. How does permaculture apply to tiny houses?
And most people actually do things completely backwards. They figure out where they're going to put the house. Then they figure out how to get a road there to it. And then they figure out how to get water there. And that's completely backwards because, we should really figure out where's the water first and foremost so we can get to the house. And it doesn't erode our roadways. So after you know where the water is, then you put your road in. And then you can build your forever house or just move your tiny house in the best possible spot.
Right.
So that, it's very user-friendly and working with the larger flows of energy, water, wind, and sun.
Right, working with nature instead of
That's exactly
against it.
it. Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people actually describe permaculture that way. It's working with nature and it's designing humans back into the landscape, integrating them back in a really holistic way.
You can follow me online at sustainablemeyeg.ca, on Twitter at sustainableme, or on Instagram at sustainable.me. See you there! And if you liked this video, please check out our other videos on YouTube.